Answer: I discovered that our passbook had vanished. At the bank, I learned that every year a huge sum had been transferred out. Ethan had been sending the money to his first love, Mia. I then tried to mortgage our house, only to find that even the deed had been put under Mia's name. When I confronted him, he stayed calm and said, "I already married you. What more do you want? You're just too greedy." Staring at the cold, indifferent man in front of me, I gave a bitter smile. This was the man I had clung to with everything I had. Back then, I poured all my savings into his business and helped him become the first 10,000 yuan household in our village. Because he didn't want children, I stayed childless for life. Yet in the end, he used my savings to support Mia and their child, while I, with no money left for treatment, died full of resentment. When I opened my eyes again, I was back on the day I gave him the fountain pen. Someone shoved me hard, and I nearly fell. Ethan's voice rang in my ears. "Emily, I told you I don't like you. Stop giving me things. I don't want people to misunderstand our relationship. You trail after me all day. Don't you even know what modesty and self-respect are?" Steadying myself, I saw Ethan in his 20s. Washed out old clothes, several big patches on his pants. Nothing like the suited man I remembered. That's when I realized I'd been reborn. When I came back to my senses, I noticed the Shanghai brand fountain pen in my hand, the gift I'd bought to curry favor with him. Seeing me silent, his face turned impatient. Staring at the pen, he said, "I'll reluctantly accept this gift. I'll forgive you this time, but don't bother me again. Don't you get it?" He reached out to take it. I actually laughed at his shameless freeloading and at my past self for being blind enough to fancy such a loser and get ruined by him. Just before his fingers touched the pen, I whipped my hand back and slipped it into my pocket. "If you don't like it, then don't take it. No need to force yourself." In my last life, after Ethan accepted the pen, he kept complaining that my gifts disgusted him. Yet he used that very pen every day. The educated youths, judging from the pen's value, assumed he came from a well-off family and flocked around him, feeding his vanity. I foolishly thought he was just shy and only pretending to dislike me, so I brought him even more expensive gifts. Ethan accepted every single one without fail. The moment I pocketed the pen, he froze, his outstretched hand hanging in the air. Almost without thinking, he muttered, "You're playing hard to get." I sneered, "You're overthinking it. I just realized I don't like you anymore." "Don't worry, I won't bother you again." I turned to leave. Panicking, he grabbed my arm, his gaze flicked to the pen in my pocket, and his tone softened. "Emily, I was too harsh earlier. That was my fault. It's just that we haven't known each other long, and you keep following me every day. It doesn't look good." Just then, Mia appeared at the corner of the road and called out, "Ethan, the team leader's been looking for you everywhere." Startled, Ethan quickly let go, stepped back to put distance between us, and turned to her, the tips of his ears slowly turning red. "Mia, Emily keeps forcing gifts on me. I've rejected her so many times, but she's been clinging to me these days and I can't get rid of her." Mia walked over, soft and delicate. "Ethan, you're a man. You don't understand girls. Let me talk to Emily. The team leader needs you urgently. You should go." Ethan nodded, shot me a warning glare, and left. Mia kept a smile on her face, though it didn't reach her eyes. "Emily, Ethan will definitely go back to the city one day. He won't stay here for you. Don't waste your time on him." In my past life, I missed the subtext and thought she was kindly advising me. But this time, I wasn't foolish. I knew Ethan often resold the gifts I gave him, used the money to buy things for Mia, and Mia, in turn, mistakenly believed he came from a wealthy family. "Clinging to me like that," she said. "Don't worry, I don't like him." I didn't care to argue with her, so I brushed it off with a casual reply and quickly left. Behind me, Ethan's voice called out, "Emily, you'd better mean what you said." I returned to the factory, changed into my work clothes, and continued with my shift. But when the day was over, I discovered that the pen in my pocket was gone. As I searched through my locker, my coworker, Sister Zhang, noticed and casually remarked, "Emily, that young man you liked came by to see you this afternoon. It was Ethan. A few times when you were too busy, I let him take gifts from your locker." I froze. I had never imagined he would dare to take something without asking. With several village officials, I hurried to his residence. He was sitting at his desk, carefully practicing calligraphy with my fountain pen. "Ethan," one of the cadres said, "we received a report that you stole Emily's pen." Ethan looked shocked. "I didn't steal it," she insisted on giving it to me. My eyes moved from the pen to his face. Calmly I asked, "When did I ever give it to you? That pen was in the pocket of my work clothes in my locker. You took it without permission." He hesitated, frowning. "So what if I rejected your advances? Do you have to slander me like this? Don't let love turn into hate. I can't afford that." His shamelessness was beyond anything I had expected. The village officials looked at me uncertainly. "Emily, everyone in the village knows you like Ethan. Could it really be you?" Yes, I had shown my affection openly in the past. Everyone knew how much I liked him, but that didn't give him the right to steal from me. I fixed him with a cold stare. "Ethan, what exactly is our relationship?" Without thinking, he blurted out, "Emily, I told you I don't like you." I laughed scornfully. "If you don't like me, then why did you accept every gift I gave you, always pretending you had no choice, yet using them so conveniently?" As I spoke, I snatched the pen out of his hand. "Since you've rejected me so firmly, return everything I gave you. That way no one can say you're living off a woman." Ethan's face went pale, then flushed, as he watched helplessly while I ransacked his room. The pile of gifts from the past few months was so large I couldn't carry them all, and one of the cadres had to help me haul everything out. Ethan's family was poor. The comfort he enjoyed in the village came almost entirely from my support. If not for my money, he would never have married me in my last life just to secure his future. As I stepped out of his doorway, I suddenly turned back. He mistook it for regret, and though he tried to suppress his delight, he put on a false sigh and said, "Why go to all this trouble? Even if I reject you now, we can still be friends." I walked right past him, grabbed the chair by his desk, and said, "Your chair broke before, so you took mine from my house. It's time you gave it back." Without another word, I carried it out and left. Later, I resold all the gifts and, together with the money left at home, I had exactly 1,000 yuan. This was the inheritance my parents left me before they passed. If I lived quietly and carefully, this money would be enough to get me through life. But after everything I had experienced in my last life, I no longer wanted just stability. I knew the coming decades would bring tremendous changes to the nation's economy. As long as I dared to fight and worked hard, I could seize the chance to become truly wealthy. In my previous life, I had spent my resources and energy helping Ethan become the first wealthy man in the village. This time, I would stay far away from Ethan and Mia, build my own career, and achieve financial freedom. The next morning, I handed in my resignation at the factory. I was determined to go to the city and start a business. Our village was remote, and it took 6 hours by bus to reach the city. The bus only ran on weekends, so I had to wait 3 more days before I could leave. On Wednesday night, villagers gathered in the square with stools in hand. It was movie night. I was absorbed in watching the film when, at some point, Ethan slipped into the seat beside me and pressed a piece of candy into my palm. Still sulking with me, he sat down and handed me a piece of candy. I glared at him, annoyed, and tossed it right back. "Comrade Ethan, we're not exactly close, are we? You'd better stay away from me. It wouldn't be good if Mia misunderstood." Ethan didn't get angry. Shamelessly, he leaned in again and said, "Emily, I know you're just throwing a tantrum. How about this? If you buy me a Phoenix brand bicycle, I'll consider being with you." A Phoenix bicycle cost nearly 200 yuan. Ethan assumed I was hopelessly in love with him and would never truly give up. He thought my rejection was just me acting spoiled, which gave him the confidence to open his lion's mouth and demand such a thing. In my past life, I had fallen for his coaxing and actually bought him that bicycle. But after I gave it to him, there was never a place for me on it. The seat on the back was always reserved for Mia. Remembering that, I suddenly raised my voice. "Comrade Ethan, I'm really not interested in you. Stop pestering me. If you want a bicycle so badly, earn the money yourself through your own labor, instead of scheming after a girl's money." My words rang out louder than the movie playing in the background, drawing the attention of everyone nearby. Ethan froze in place, red-faced and flustered. The next moment, spotting Mia in the crowd, he scrambled to save face and loudly snapped, Emily, stop talking nonsense. You're the one who's been chasing me. Everyone knows you've been clinging to me like a leech. Who said anything about you buying me a bicycle? You misheard. I said I was buying one myself, and that you weren't allowed to ride it. I laughed mockingly. Then I'll look forward to seeing this bicycle of yours. Around us, whispers rose. A Phoenix bicycle costs nearly 200 yuan. Ethan really must have some means. Didn't you hear? His family in the city is supposed to be wealthy. With his face turning darker and darker, I left with a smile. The next day, I rallied the villagers and led them to the educated youth quarters to see Ethan's new bicycle. Seeing us march over in such numbers, Ethan came out, his face green with panic. After racking his brains, he stammered out an excuse. I thought it over all night and decided not to buy a bicycle. I can't set myself apart from everyone else. I came here to work with you all to build the countryside, not to enjoy life. We need to embrace the spirit of hard work and endure hardship for a better future. His speech moved quite a few people, who clapped and praised his lofty ideals. He then turned to me and said critically, Emily, you spend money recklessly, throwing away the spirit of hardship and endurance. You have none of the qualities of a true young pioneer. I suggest you entrust your money to me before you completely ruin yourself. I hadn't expected his desire to control my money to be so strong. Smiling, I nodded repeatedly and said, You're right, Ethan. Your awareness is so noble. Everyone in the village should hand their money over to you, so you can lead us in suffering together. Some who caught my sarcasm couldn't help laughing out loud. Ethan's face contorted with fury. Emily, don't come to regret this. Later, I heard that because Ethan never bought the bicycle, Mia ignored him for several days. He blamed me for it and glared every time our paths crossed. On the day before I was set to leave, I went to the small shop at the village entrance to buy gifts. Since my parents had passed away 3 years earlier, the neighbors, feeling sorry for me being all alone, always invited me to eat with them on holidays and shared whatever good things they had. Before leaving, I wanted to thank each of them properly. Arms full of gifts, I was heading home when I ran into Ethan returning from work. He immediately assumed the gifts were for him, and his face turned cold. Emily, don't think that just because you're giving me something, I'll forgive your unreasonable behavior. Before, when I thought your pursuit of me was sincere, I might have considered marrying you. But now, I'd never marry a village woman like you. I set the gifts I was carrying on the ground, then suddenly reached out and gave a sharp tug. Ethan's shirt tore apart instantly, splitting into ragged pieces. He clutched at himself and shouted, Emily, what are you doing in broad daylight? I sneered. Since you look down on me as just some village woman, then stop wearing clothes I made for you. I know you've always despised me, thought I was a country bumpkin. If it weren't for the things I kept giving you, you wouldn't even have bothered to say a word to me. Deep down, you've always looked down on me. But at the same time, you've been greedy for my money. Even if you married me in the end, it would have been only for my money. Ethan, there are plenty of men in this world. I don't need you. But you can't keep taking my things while spitting on me behind my back. That's not how a decent person behaves. Exposed for what he really was, Ethan's face flushed red. Emily, don't talk nonsense. What money have I ever taken from you? Impatiently, I cut him off. I don't want to argue with you. You know perfectly well what's in your heart. You don't need to explain to me. With that, I stepped right past him and left. After delivering the gifts one by one to the neighbors who had always cared for me, I went home, packed my bags, and went to bed early. The next morning, I boarded the long-distance bus. As I gazed at the passing scenery outside the window, my nose stung, and the tears I had been holding back finally fell. At that moment, I completely said goodbye to my old self. From now on, I would write a new chapter of my life. The bus jolted along for 6 hours before finally reaching the city center. In my previous life, when the country opened up and urbanization surged, I had come here with Ethan to make a living. To support his career, I had poured out all of my savings without hesitation. We rented a tiny storefront to start a clothing business. There were many young people in the city, and they loved to dress up. From that little shop, we slowly grew bigger, opened several branches, and eventually established our own clothing brand. Finally, we built our own factory and company. So in this life, I also decided to start with clothing. After all, it was the one thing I knew best. But now I had the experience of my past life, and I wouldn't take as many wrong turns. I rented a shop on the busiest pedestrian street and did a simple renovation. Then I spent a week riding the train back and forth to the port to buy stock. The clothes there were stylish and inexpensive, things you couldn't find in our small city. I focused solely on women's fashion. No matter the era, women's money is always the easiest to earn. In my shop, every outfit was sold as a complete set, saving customers the trouble of figuring out how to match pieces themselves. I named the store Emily's Fashion. On the very first day, the crowd of young women nearly broke the threshold. They said the clothes weren't just fashionable, but every set was put together in a way that dazzled them. They scrambled to grab the outfits, afraid they would miss out if they were a moment too late. Every day the shop was packed to the brim. I couldn't handle it alone, so I hired a young helper. Twice a month I traveled to the port to restock. Though running the shop was exhausting, the moment I counted the money, the joy outweighed everything else. The money was from my labor, every bit of running around in that store. In my last life, Ethan only handled the accounts, and because I trusted him, I never once checked the books. I only knew we were making a lot, but never the exact numbers. Later, when the business grew into a company, Ethan persuaded me to step back under the excuse of sparing me hard work. From then on, he completely controlled the finances, and with that power, he was able to build another home outside, raising Mia and their child with my money. I hadn't discovered the truth until my dying breath. Now, looking at the piles of money I earned with my own hands, I laughed out loud. So this was what it felt like to hold wealth in my own grip. It was intoxicating. After balancing the books, I handed out wages and bonuses to my shop assistant. She was so excited she thanked me 5 times in a row. 2 months later, after getting off the train with new stock and hauling it into the store, I was met with her bitter face. "Emily," she said with a frown, "a new clothing store just opened across the street. It's called Mia's Boutique. The prices there were half of mine, and even my regular customers were running to buy clothes from them." I set down the goods in my hands and went to the shop my assistant had mentioned. The moment I walked in, I saw the 2 people I least wanted to see, Ethan and Mia. When Ethan spotted me, his expression said it all. "Emily," he smirked knowingly, "you've been reborn too, haven't you?" I froze in place, a chill creeping up my back. He lowered his voice and continued, "I had a dream. I dreamed we got married, started a business together. Now that I see you here, I'm sure it was all real. In my last life I let Mia down. Heaven gave me this chance to start over, so I could correct my mistake. That's why in this life, I can't marry you. Emily, you already had me for a lifetime. Now it's Mia's turn." His shameless words actually made me laugh. "Do you think you're some great prize? That everyone's fighting over you? In my last life, you ruined me. Do you think I'd still want to marry you again?" In reality, all he'd done in that life was get a marriage certificate with me, while the woman who truly lived with him and bore his child was Mia. Every time he claimed to be traveling for work or attending a meeting, he was really at her home. I kept watch over an empty house for 30 long years. And now he dared to say I'd already had him for a lifetime? Ethan scowled, brows furrowing. "So you're just laying it all out now? Fine, then don't harbor any more thoughts about me." Before I could retort, Mia pushed her way past the customers at the door and quickly clung to Ethan's arm like she was declaring her territory. She beamed. "Our Ethan really has a talent for business. In just 3 days we've already made several hundred. Soon we'll be a 10,000 yuan household." Ethan gazed at her dotingly. "It's thanks to you, Mia. You're amazing at finding these cheap, pretty clothes. We're going to dominate this whole street." "Cheap and pretty," I repeated inwardly, turning my head to look into their shop. But Mia immediately blocked my line of sight with her outstretched arms. "Emily, business should be fair competition. Don't think about stealing our ideas. If your store isn't doing well, maybe you should look at yourself instead." I gave her a deep look, then turned and walked away. I knew the goods I got from the port were already at rock-bottom prices. The styles in their store were nearly identical to mine, yet their selling price was lower than even my cost. Puzzled, I asked the restaurant owner next door for help. Could you buy a piece from Mia's boutique and bring it back to me? When my assistant brought the item, I compared it to the same style we sold. Though the design was identical, side by side the difference was glaring. Mia's clothes were made of cheap fabric with a strong chemical odor, and the stitching was sloppy and uneven. Suddenly I remembered. In my last life, an illegal factory inland churned out imitation clothing. Their stock was updated quickly, and their prices were so low that many shopkeepers abandoned port suppliers and switched to them. I too had been tempted, but after checking a few samples and finding the quality awful, I gave up. Later, when every batch of their clothes had quality problems, angry customers swarmed shops demanding refunds. The factory owners fled in the night, leaving merchants with unsellable stock. Several stores went bankrupt. Ethan, who only ever cared about handling money and never about the goods themselves, had no memory of this. He thought he could just pick up where we left off in our last life, not realizing he had no understanding of the clothing business and could never achieve success without me. Knowing Mia's boutique would soon collapse because of this, I couldn't help the thrill of anticipation. In my past life, they had joined hands to bully me, steal my assets, and leave me to die untreated. This time, I hoped they'd keep suffering misfortune. Sure enough, 3 days later, Ethan and Mia were surrounded at the entrance of their shop. Customers who had bought their clothes were shouting for refunds, waving their purchases angrily. My assistant ran back breathlessly. "Emily, something's happened. There's a fight over there. It sounds like someone got killed." Who died? I wondered, my heart leaping with grim hope. If it were Ethan and Mia, I would have celebrated for 3 days straight. But when I reached the scene, half the crowd had already dispersed. To my disappointment, no one had died. Ethan had only split his forehead open while trying to shield Mia, blood trickling down his face. Mia was squatting on the floor, hurriedly gathering the clothes scattered everywhere, her eyes swollen from crying. Ethan sat with his head wrapped in gauze, sighing as he flipped through the account book. "Mia, where did you even get this stock? With quality like this, there's no way we can sell it. We still have 800 yuan worth in storage. Go return it." Mia's hands froze mid-motion. She lifted her pale face and said, "Ethan, while you were at the hospital, I went to look for that factory. They've already skipped town. They were swindlers. I can't find them anymore." Ethan shot to his feet, yanking her up roughly. His face turned dark. "Didn't you say that factory was reliable? You blew all our money on their goods. Tomorrow is repayment day, and the profit we just earned is gone. What do you expect me to use to pay back the loan?" It was the first time Ethan had truly lost his temper at her. But Mia wasn't having it. She tore his hand off, planted her fists on her hips, and shouted, "Don't dump all the blame on me. Didn't I ask your opinion before I bought the stock? My parents had already arranged a job for me at a state-owned factory, but you insisted on dragging me into this business. You promised we'd become a 10,000 yuan household in a year. If you hadn't been so bent on copying Emily and opening a clothing store, would any of this have happened? Now look, it's all ruined." Ethan clenched his fists, his chest heaving violently. After a long moment, he forced himself to calm down, pulled Mia into his arms, and coaxed her softly. All right. I was too impatient and said the wrong thing. Don't be angry, it's my fault. But tomorrow that loan still has to be repaid. Didn't you say your parents got you an introduction letter to a state-owned factory? Let's sell that letter for cash, use the money to pay back the loan, and then buy new stock." Mia pushed him away, her eyes filled with suspicion. "Ethan, didn't you say your family had money to support your business? Fine, the loan was one thing. But why are you asking me to sell my future for money now?" Ethan froze for a second, then forced out an excuse. "This is my parents' way of testing me. If I can make it on my own, they'll let me inherit the family business." In my last life, Mia had believed Ethan's lies without question. All the money I worked so hard to earn became the capital he flaunted in front of her. I hadn't expected that without my financial support this time, Ethan would dare take out loans and now even wanted Mia to cover his debts. But Mia wasn't me. What she loved was money, not Ethan. In the end, she refused to sell her introduction letter for cash. Hidden in the shadows by the wall, I slipped away quietly before they noticed me eavesdropping. Soon after, Mia's boutique shut its doors, and my store's business thrived again with customers streaming in non-stop. One morning, as usual, I hurried to catch the train to the port for new stock. But at the station, I ran into Ethan and Mia again. The moment they spotted me, they stuck to my heels, terrified of losing me. The crowd was packed, so with a few quick sidesteps, I managed to shake them off. Just as I was about to board, Ethan's anxious voice rang out behind me. "Emily, wait for us. Don't be so selfish. Let us go with you to get stock." I didn't even look back, diving straight into the carriage. But just before the train pulled away, they squeezed their way in too. From that moment on, they shadowed me like prison guards. Even when I went to the restroom, they stood watch at the door, afraid I'd slip away. Late that night, after Mia had fallen asleep, Ethan crept over and shook me awake. "Emily, wake up. I need to tell you something." Annoyed, I opened my eyes and glared at him. "If you've got something to say, spit it out." Glancing at Mia to make sure she was still asleep, Ethan pulled 200 yuan from his pocket and shoved it into my hand. Lowering his voice, he said, "I won't let you help us for free. Here's 200 yuan. Take us with you to get stock." In that instant, everything became clear. So Mia must have finally agreed to sell the introduction letter for money, letting Ethan keep the business going. I stayed silent, and seeing that, Ethan pressed on. He started playing the emotional card. After all, we were husband and wife for a whole lifetime before, and we built a business together. Even if there was no love, there was at least a revolutionary bond between us, wasn't there? Seeing you living so well now, I'm genuinely happy for you. I'm not asking for much. Just take us along to get stock, all right? Seeing that he still wanted to go on, I waved a hand to cut him off. "Fine, I'll help you this once." Even if I refused, they'd find some way to stick with me. And besides, 200 yuan was no small sum. It was worth 10 months of wages. Who would turn away money like that? I tucked the bills into my pocket, crossed my arms, closed my eyes, and went back to sleep. Right now, conserving my strength was what mattered most. The real work would begin at the port. On the third morning, I led them to the port. I went about my usual routine, picking through stock, bargaining, and making purchases. They shadowed me, mimicking every move, and ended up buying nearly twice as much as I did. It was Mia's first time there, and everything she saw seemed novel. Beyond the 2 huge bags of stock, she even bought a sack of little trinkets. After we finished, we headed straight to the train station. Mia, carrying her small bag, walked excitedly ahead. Ethan trailed behind, his shoulders weighed down by 2 massive bundles. He was drenched in sweat, his clothes plastered to his body. Watching him like that, I couldn't help but smile faintly. In my past life, Ethan had always been afraid of hard work, leaving me to take the train alone, pick out stock, and lug it all back. Now at least, he was tasting the hardship I had endured. When he finally managed to squeeze onto the train and drop his load, Ethan collapsed onto the seat, gasping for breath. Beside him, Mia opened her water bottle. Ethan instinctively reached out to take it, but she downed it all in one go. Still unsatisfied, she handed him the empty bottle and chirped, "Ethan, go fill it up again." A flash of anger crossed his eyes, but he said nothing, dragging himself up to fetch more water. I licked my popsicle and stayed quiet. In my last life, he had lived in comfort, always pampered by me. This time, having Mia around to torment him was a rather fitting punishment. Once we got off the train, we parted ways. Ethan thought that getting the same stock as me meant he could recreate the success of our past life. But he couldn't have been more wrong. Running a clothing store isn't just about the goods. It's also about service. Ethan was too arrogant to ever engage with customers, preferring to hide in the back counting money. Mia was petty and easily offended, the type who would rather die than lower herself to flatter a customer. But customers come to spend money, not to be scolded. Within just a few days of reopening, Mia's boutique was echoing daily with the sound of her quarrels with customers. Those who had stepped into their shop soon turned and came to mine instead. With business drying up, Ethan finally couldn't sit still. He stood at the entrance of their store, arguing with Mia. "Mia, can't you learn from Emily? You call yourself an educated woman, but you're not even as capable as a village girl." At the mention of my name, Mia flew into a rage. So that's it, Ethan. I knew there was something between you and her. Back in the village, you were always tangled up with her. Now you're with me, and you're still thinking about her? How am I not better than her? She's just some country bumpkin. What does she have that I don't? Ethan, are you blind? And you've got the nerve to criticize how I run the shop? You didn't even put in a cent. It was my job certificate we sold to get that money. You're nothing but a kept man living off me. Ethan's face burned as she pointed at his nose and cursed him. Choking with anger, he spat back. Mia, I regret choosing you. What else can you do besides cause trouble? If I had stayed with Emily, I'd never have to suffer this. She's far more capable than you. She could have made me a 10,000 yuan household within a year. With a sharp crack, Mia's hand whipped across his face, leaving 5 glaring red marks. Then go find her. Why are you still clinging to me? Mia ran off, covering her face, sobbing, leaving Ethan standing frozen in place, drawing stares and whispers from the passers-by. That night, while I was alone in my shop taking inventory with the door half open, Ethan suddenly barged in, reeking of alcohol. Emily, I regret it, he slurred. Mia's just a lazy shrew. She's nothing compared to your gentleness and virtue. She's not a woman to build a life with. Let's get back together. Just like in our last life, we'll run a business, make big money. This time, I promise I won't make the same mistakes. Whether it's my money or myself, I'll give it all to you, all right? He stepped closer, reaching out as if to cup my face. Furious, I raised my hand and slapped him hard across the cheek, the sound ringing through the shop. It perfectly matched the slap Mia had given him earlier that day. When he lifted his head, there were 2 glaring handprints on his face. Emily, if hitting me makes you feel better, then hit me harder. I'm not afraid of pain, he said, staring at me with what he thought was deep affection. My stomach churned in disgust. Realizing he was still out of his senses, I grabbed the glass of water on the table and splashed it in his face. Ethan, I already made myself clear. There is no future for us. I will never marry you. You want to take advantage of everything. Didn't I suffer enough in my last life being deceived by you? This time, I just want to stay as far away from you as possible. I don't want anything to do with you. But it was as if he couldn't understand human speech. He went on stubbornly. I know you're still angry. You're just jealous that I chose Mia this time, aren't you? Don't worry. I don't like her anymore. When I still refused to answer, he simply lingered in the shop, refusing to leave. With no other choice, I called the police. They arrived quickly and hauled him down to the station. The next morning, Mia went to bail him out, and the 2 of them ended up in a huge fight, screaming and throwing things at each other. Not long after, Mia's boutique was shut down and turned into a breakfast shop. As for where Ethan and Mia went, I couldn't care less. I threw myself fully into my own clothing business. Within a year, I had opened several more branches and hired many employees. The young girl who once helped me had grown capable enough to manage a store as its manager. The following year, several investors approached me. After careful consideration, I partnered with one of them to open a clothing factory, establish my own brand, and build a full-scale clothing enterprise. The village chief later wrote to me, saying they'd heard I had become an entrepreneur and hoped I could contribute to the village's development. So I returned home. As I stepped out of my car, I happened to run into a wedding celebration in the village. To my surprise, the bride and groom were none other than Ethan and Mia. At the chief's warm invitation, I joined the villagers in attending their wedding. Ethan wore a bitter smile the entire time. With a heavy sigh, the village chief told me what had happened to them over the past year. After failing in business in the city, Ethan had been introduced to a local job by one of the educated youths. He came back to the village. Meanwhile, Mia lazed around at home for more than half a year. When her parents finally tried to force her to work, they discovered she had secretly sold her job introduction letter. Furious, they threw her out. With nowhere to go, Mia clung to Ethan in the village. Ethan didn't want to marry her, but she tricked him into getting drunk and then stirred up trouble at the village government, leaving him no choice but to marry her. When the banquet ended, I personally handed my gift money to Ethan. His eyes were filled with emotion. Emily, I was forced. I raised a hand, cutting him off. Ethan, you're already married to Mia. Just live well with her. The past is the past. He froze as I gave him a small nod, then turned and got back into my car. As the engine started and dust rose behind me, I glanced in the rearview mirror and caught sight of Mia glaring at me, her teeth clenched in hatred. That night, just as I was about to fall asleep, a man suddenly kicked the door open and stormed in. "Little lady, what's the point of making so much money? Why don't you just give in to me and I'll take you home as my wife?" Under the moonlight, his face twisted into a lecherous grin as he threw himself on top of me, trying to force himself on me. Looking for death. I snatched up the water glass by my bed and smashed it hard against his head. "Ah!" he screamed, collapsing to the floor, clutching his head as blood poured down his face. "Damn woman, how could you hit so hard?" The commotion in my house was so loud that the neighbors and village officials rushed in one after another. Faced with such a scene, the man was instantly terrified and confessed everything. He admitted that Mia had given him 10 yuan to come and assault me, saying that if he ruined my reputation, he could marry me, and then my property would all belong to him in the future. The village chief and officials were furious. They feared I would withdraw my investment in the village. "Mia, hurry up and apologize." But Mia suddenly lost her mind and screamed, "Why should I apologize? She's the one seducing men everywhere. How could a woman earn so much money? She must be doing something shameful. If I were you, I wouldn't take her dirty investment. How can you sleep at night with that kind of money?" The village chief exploded and kicked Mia hard, knocking her to the ground. "You've gone mad." Later, Ethan arrived and dragged her away. Before leaving, he lowered his head and muttered several apologies to me. The chief looked at me with deep regret. "Boss Emily, we'll make sure you get a satisfactory explanation." I waved my hand. "Just handle it according to the rules. Don't worry, the investment will still go ahead as agreed in the contract." The next morning, I left the village. In the following 20 years, the economy developed rapidly. With the memories of my past life, I invested in many industries, and long ago surpassed the 10,000 yuan household benchmark, achieving true financial freedom. One day, villagers came to deliver me local specialties. In our chat, they mentioned Ethan and Mia. Over the years, they had fought constantly, often even coming to blows. Mia had suffered several miscarriages, 4 or 5 times, and eventually had to undergo surgery to remove her uterus. Just last month, she was diagnosed with cancer, but Ethan had failed in multiple business ventures, accumulating heavy debts, and could only leave her at home to fend for herself. Hearing this, I fell silent for a long time. Wasn't this exactly the fate I had suffered in my past life? So destiny hadn't changed at all. It had only shifted onto someone else. Whoever married Ethan was doomed to misery. That day, as I sat in my car heading to the airport for an overseas investment project, I passed an intersection and saw a middle-aged man quarreling with a security guard. "You lousy guard, what's so great about you? In my past life, I was the boss of a listed company." When the man turned his head, I raised the window. It was Ethan. "Ethan, in the end, you're still living in a dream." Ethan, who once thought himself the center of my world, had been reduced to a bitter man clinging to past illusions. Mia, who schemed so ruthlessly, had paid the price of her choices. Their downfall was not my revenge, it was simply the inevitable result of the lives they chose to live. As for me, I had businesses spanning across cities, trusted partners by my side, and a team that called me their leader. More importantly, I had freedom. Freedom to live without fear, without compromise, without anyone taking advantage of my kindness again. That night, as my plane soared into the clouds, I closed my eyes and let the hum of the engines calm me. My past life had ended in tragedy, but this life was my own to write. With a faint smile, I whispered to myself, "Emily, you finally knew I would never look back."